I'm Joe Casa, and I'm going to be telling you briefly about this short course on holistic strategic risk management. And my camera is mounted on top of the monitor, so I may not be looking in the camera all the time. The objectives of this short video is to summarize the 4-day course in 15 minutes or less. So, my usual set of topics for a short course summary: introduction, learning outcomes, the assumptions behind the course, an overview of the sessions, comments from previous participants, and talking about how and where to get further information. This is not your average course. It uses the systems approach that was developed from 15 years of research into both the pedagogy and the needed content. If you think you're going to sit back and listen for 4 days, don't bother to come. You're going to be taken out of your comfort zone. You're going to have to think. The sessions are intense. You will be doing exercises because this course teaches principles as well as processes, and it can be readily customized for specific needs for specific organizations. The learning outcomes: to train policymakers to identify and assess risks associated with implementation of a policy, to understand the methodology of risk mapping, to understand how to quantify risks, to understand ways of identifying potential positive consequences. That's turning risks into opportunities. To learn how to develop risk mitigation action plans, and you'll actually develop one. To understand about how adjusting policy affects decisions and directions. To understand how risk propagate from policy making through policy implementation via the system development process. And then you do bits of exercises, or you do exercises in each of the sessions, but at the end you're going to do a practical exercise in risk identification and mitigation that takes you all the way from setting the policy right through implementing it. The assumptions are the course is in seminar format. There's too much knowledge to cover in the contact hours, so you're going to get a stack of readings. This is your homework and a reference for use after the course is over. The lecturers will summarize the knowledge and point out the important points, and your practical activities will bring the knowledge to life and give you the experiential anchor points, because studies in education have shown that you can't learn something new unless you've got somewhere to anchor that knowledge. I show the sessions and the schedule on slide 7, and you can see the current version of the class. I was initially asked in 2012, I was asked if I could put a class like this together, and I said yes, sure, no problem, thinking I'll go to the library, I'll find the textbook, I'll go on the internet, see what other people are doing, and then I'll put a class together. So after I said yes, we sold the class, and time came for me to put the class together, and I realized, whoa, there was nothing out there. Couldn't find anything on strategic risk management. So I put a class together, a little bit of systems thinking, a little bit of systems engineering, a little bit of project management, a little bit of public affairs, a little bit of policy, and of various other topics, mixed them all together, created the course, and the customer liked it. Customer was satisfied and liked it. Since then, the course has undergone a significant amount of change, and you can see the current set of sessions in slide 7. And you notice that day 4 is set up to do exercises. And now let me explain what happens in each of the sessions, after reminding you that at the end of each day we do some feedback. You as the student will give me some feedback on what went on in the day. I will share everybody's feedback with you in the following morning, and it gives us a chance to review what happened on the previous day and how it will relate to what's going to happen on the current day. Session 1 starts with policies, the concept of risk and opportunities, shows how actions have consequences, explains the difference between risks and uncertainties, and this is where the math come in, and it's the only place where the math really comes in, and I get it over and done with in the first session. So I briefly review probability theory as applied to risks and introduce the flaws of average. So I will go through and show you how risk emphasis changes over time. It starts at the beginning with the social and political risks, then moves into financial, and then goes into the technological and managerial risks. And basically, a lot of the risks are associated with poor choice, poor doing something, poor doing something, poor doing something, and the constant risk across the entire series of events is the use of poor people. And this is reinforced in the literature because the focus on excellence is on people, not on process. And that's why this course teaches you principles as well as process. Because when you just learn process, you end up with garbage in, garbage out. You need to learn to think and apply the principles. And one of the principles you'll be applying is Simpson's paradox. Don't know what it is? Either come to the class and I'll tell you, or you can find it on the internet, or read Sam Savage's excellent book, The Flaw of Averages, or listen to it. There's an audiobook version. Session 2 deals with change, because if you're going to institute a policy, you usually want to change something. So you need to understand the nature of change, the effects of change, understand that there will be resistance to change and why there will be resistance to change, and find ways of overcoming that resistance to change. Session 3 deals with problems, solutions, and risks. So this is a brief overview of my workshop course on systems thinking and beyond. So we explain and you apply systems thinking. It goes beyond systems thinking and applies holistic thinking, explains the nature of problems and solutions, and explains the myths and realities of the problem-solving process. And I have a snippet in my YouTube video channel which goes into a little more detail of this. You can look at that and see how it goes. But basically, it's not what you're taught about problem solving is wrong, it's what you've been taught is incomplete. And in this session and in the video snippet, I explain how and why. Session 4 introduces you to systems, because you're going to make the change, and the change is going to happen in a system. And so you need to understand the nature of systems, the stability of systems, and I will introduce you to, and you will use, a functional view of a system, and I'll also introduce a template for a system that integrates mission viability and resource management into the system at the start of the system development process instead of adding those functions later. And this will improve the probability of a successful change and that your new policy will be implemented successfully. In session 5, we get to mitigating strategic and operational risks. So I explain projects and the project lifecycle. We review the holistic approach to project management. And again, this is expanded broadly in a 5-day course. And there's another video that goes into that. And I map the relationships between strategic and operational risks using the HKMF. HKMF you can see on slide 15. It's 2 layers, 2-dimensional, the layer of systems engineering, or the layer of system, starting from the product, going up through the system, business, supply chain, socioeconomic layer, Derek Hitchens' 5 layers, and the state in the system lifecycle, starting from needs identification all the way through to disposal. And one of the things you'll learn about is the 9-system model, which I show here. And section 6 takes you to traditional and holistic risk management. So this is where I show the difference between the traditional approach and the holistic approach. And so it explores the risk management process, and it explains that the traditional approaches to risk management are flawed and how and why. And then we get to how to understand and think about risks as failures, and to identify risks using failure mode analysis, and how risks are quantified in terms of probability of occurrence and the severity of impact. In session 7, we then go through the project lifecycle and identify where and when and how risks arise, starting with formulating the policies all the way through the implementation of the policy, and we plot them in the HKMF. We discuss differences between strategic and tactical risks and consider ways of mitigating those risks. Session 8 deals with developing risk mitigation plans. So we go through the essential elements of a project plan, discuss product-based planning, the difference between a work breakdown structure and a work package, how to plan risk mitigation, and why planning should iterate from the project start to the finish at the conceptual level, and then working back from the answer and start at the finish and work back to the start at the detailed level, and then you document the plan as a forward-looking process. And in the context of the 9-system model, we will then be in S4, the process planning the transition. Session 9 discusses systemic and systematic risks, so I explain the concepts of systemic and systematic risks, and we deal with uncertainty and risk management. Session 10 goes into communicating with the public about risks, because particularly if you're government or even if you're in a contractor and you're developing a solution system, you've got to communicate with the public about the risks and get the public to at least acknowledge and agree that the benefits will outweigh the risks. And so we go through some different ways of communicating with the public using technology, and you get to prepare a draft media and communications plan. Session 11 goes into complexity and managing complexity. So it explains complexity and its impact on the policies and goes through some ways of dealing with complexity. There's some myths about complexity, and one of the myths is it can't be dealt with and can't be managed, and the answer is rubbish. If you look out in the real world, you will see that there are plenty of commercial organizations managing complexity, and so in session 11 we look at ways in which they do it. Session 12 is your practical exercise in risk management, and this is where you get to practice the knowledge acquired in the module. So in the module course, you have been doing exercises on little bits. In session 12, you get to go through the whole thing from policy, conception to implementation, and the exercises will walk you through all the way, and then you will realize exactly how much you've learned. Comments from previous participants. In the last iteration of the class, the participants were asked, have you benefited from the course? If yes, how? So, yes, opened my mind to see risk management in a more complete manner, to be able to make use of tools and understanding. Yes, the knowledge gained. Yes, the course gave a comprehensive overview of perspectives. Yes, it showed me how to do risk management in my work-related areas. Yes, it provided a more structured approach in analyzing issues. Yes, see the bigger picture, wider perspectives to issues in any implementation, lots of information and knowledge that can be later referenced. So hopefully we met the objectives and summarized the 4-day course in 15 minutes or less. So if you have any questions or comments, you need a customized version in terms of content or delivery mode, you're looking for group discounts, or you'd like a copy of the study guide so you can see more detail as to what's in the course and what readings are associated with it, or you want to register for the course, contact us and we'll help you. Thank you for taking the time to listen and view this presentation.